right, hello everyone. Let's make sure we're actually connected to the web. Let's see. All right, we are on YouTube and we are live. All right, we did it. All right, we are on YouTube and we have an echo, sorry. All right, we did it. All right. Today's topic is going to be about prepping for a vacation or a business trip or visiting family. And I know it's August, and for many of you, you've already had your summer vacation. And I may have talked about this in the past, but for some reason I was really inspired to focus on it again because I had some very specific points that I wanted to delve into about the thought process behind abandoning your tank for a few days. We very much are concerned about our livestock every single day of our lives. And we look for the nuances. We see if a fish isn't acting right. I mean, something happened. Like, for example, I'll tell you some stuff that I've come across in the Club Milo's Reef group on Facebook, where one person was in another part of the house, and his son was calling for his dad, and their triggerfish had jumped out of the tank and had gone behind. And he had to rescue this fish and put it back in the tank. And that's when he was at home and not on a trip. And so it must be even harder for that person to say, well, can we ever leave this tank alone? Can we dare go to bed and sleep? And, you know, what's going to happen in the next 12 hours? So, you know, we put things into place and we try to protect well, I was going to say our investment, but really it's the lives of the things we're taking care of. We're trying to protect that. And because of that, I feel that we oftentimes will do everything we can. You know, we'll put a netting on the top of the tank so the jumper can't get out. We will have redundancy, which I've gone into in the past, to protect against the point of failure. You know, you don't want your tank to have a weak link, so to speak. We try to have battery backups and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, my point is that when you travel, you basically lock the front door of your house and you go away, and you kind of have to hope for the best. But there are certain things that I felt like we should really talk about because, for example, some of you, I wish it was all of you, are going to MACNA in basically 2 weeks, a little bit less than 2 weeks. It actually starts 2 weeks from yesterday. And so I released a video last night, if you didn't see it yet. I show some of Las Vegas. I show some of the hotel. I show a clip about sharks at the Mandalay Bay. So there's a lot of cool things to see in that video. I hope you'll watch it. And I think it's funny that sometimes I upload a really tiny video. It's like 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. You know, like I did the one about Aquashella. Nobody watched it. I mean, the numbers were so low. And I'm thinking, but that was an easy, short video. I mean, I would think if anything, you would definitely watch that. That should have the one with a ton of views. And I almost feel like you guys are looking at the number, you know, the minutes and saying, oh, that's too short. I'm not going to watch it. It has to be this many or more for me to watch Mark. And, you know, I don't blame you. It's just it's hard to know what's going to take off and what's going to be stagnant. But it seems historically anything I do that's short usually does not get watched. It's kind of funny to me. Now, let's jump into the thought process of you're about to travel. Let's say a week from now or 2 weeks from now, or, you know, it could be around Thanksgiving, you know, which is in a couple of months, or, you know, Christmas is coming up. All those different times when you're going to travel. Labor Day weekend is coming up. You know, these are all times when family leaves town and you leave your tank behind. And what I want to get into is that I have been prepping my tank now before I leave for a trip in 2 weeks. You know, I've been prepping my tank before I went to Aquashella. I prepped it before I went to Las Vegas. I prepped before I went to see my family. I'm always prepping, but I wanted to emphasize, do not prep the night before. And that is something that you may not have thought about. You might have thought, well, that's your best time. You know, you put all this effort into it, you get everything perfect right before you leave town. But it's actually, it can be detrimental because typically, if you're like me and you want to fix things, you want to fix a lot of things. And you solve all those things you've been putting off for so long the night before, and then you jump in your car first thing in the morning, you go straight to the airport, and whatever you did wasn't quite right, or the skimmer decided to go crazy because you really cleaned it the night before, or your top-off sensor bumped down, you didn't notice it. I mean, there's things that we do that can mess with it. So ideally, you want to make changes on your tank several days in advance, because that allows you to course correct those potential issues for 2 or 3 days before you actually leave your house and leave your reef behind. Now, I'll go into some specific gear here, but I wanted to just get that into your head first. You know, you got to soak it down into your soul and into your heart to prep days in advance rather than the day of. Now, just to jump ahead really quick, the night before, definitely clean your skimmer collection cup and the riser neck. You know, but I wouldn't touch the skimmer body. I wouldn't mess with the motors. You know, that I would all leave alone. You know, the pumps. Do that the night before. Clean your glass the night before. That should be your 2 big changes. That is not the time to hook up new GFO. That is not the time to hook up new carbon and say, well, it'll be nice and crystal clear when I come back. Don't do those things. If you have a top-off system, you want to make sure there's enough water made the night before for the duration of your trip. And if you're going to travel, there's nothing wrong with putting a larger container of top-off water near the aquarium, because it's totally not in your way. And that's something I discovered many years ago. I was traveling to Mackinac. I was going to be gone 5 or 6 days. And I put a trash can full of water right next to my sump, so that way it could top off daily and my tank sitter didn't have to deal with it at all. And, you know, just one less thing that you're hoping will be taken care of. Instead, you've set it up and you just have this abundance of water. Now, keep in mind, Murphy's Law is always watching, and there's a chance that all that top-off water could go in your system at one time. So you want to ask yourself, you know, what's the worst that could happen? For example, if you have a 29-gallon tank and you put 40 gallons of top-off water next to it, any chance that something could go wrong to get all 40 gallons into your tank or all over the floor and change the salinity? So make sure that you're planning for what's right, but you know, not overkill. Let's see. All right, I mentioned a tank sitter, and a tank sitter is sort of like a pet sitter, except they know about your reef tank. And if you are trying to teach your family member that's staying behind how to take care of your tank, like it could be, you know, children that are in the teenage years, it could be a spouse, could be a girlfriend, could be a workmate, could be a roommate. You know, these are the people, you know, they have to kind of really understand how it all ticks for them to help you with it. Otherwise, it's best to get another hobbyist in the area to come over and check on your tank. And basically, they want to walk in the door and just do a quick visual inspection. Everything right side up, all the water's moving, you know, nothing's squealing or beeping or chirping. You know, there's not a giant lake happening. You know, these are the things that they would watch for. And of course, they would send you a text if something is odd. And then I would recommend that you have fish food prepared for each day. And so I do that the night before. I always prepare a series of little plastic containers that are filled up with that amount of food for each day, each feeding session. And I put in enough in there. Actually, I put in more than they need in case I'm delayed 1 or 2 more days, you know, if something goes wrong with the flights. And so I like to have the food ready. And you can, you know, if you're doing dry food, you can just put it right there by the tank somewhere handy and just put the days on top, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If it's frozen food, put it in the freezer and just say this is where the food is so they see. All right, let's talk about water testing, because that's another important thing. And sometimes while you're traveling, you want them to maybe test 1 or 2 things. So first of all, they need to know how to use the test kit. They may be used to their own style of test kit. And in that regard, you would want to show them how yours works or have them do the test with your kit a few times in front of you. You know, just make sure they understand it. In case, for example, your tank has, you know, let's say your tank is well known for having problems with alkalinity, and you check the water, you know, it's great, and you know you're measuring it around 8, 8.5, but you know that weird stuff happens. It goes down to 6 or it rises to 11. So if your tank sitter is, you know, willing to do a test once or twice while you're gone, just to make sure the numbers are on track, that would be great. So what I was going to suggest is that if you test your water before the trip, leave those test results next to your tank so that when they test, they can compare the number they got to what's on the notes you left. And that way they can say, oh yeah, okay, it's all right. It's very close to his number. And I just think that that might be a nice way to preemptively avoid a flurry of texts that could be freaking you out. And then, of course, an aquarium controller is one of the best ways to know what's going on with your tank when you are away. And if you can log into your system and you can just look at parameters like temperature and pH and what else can we measure? Just make sure the power is even on. If your controller doesn't connect, there's no power at your house, and you should be calling your tank sitter. A controller can also text you when something goes out of norm. It can text you if it depends on the gear you buy. But let's say you have a sensor on the floor that detects moisture, and it gets wet, it sends you a text and an email to warn you, hey, there's water on the floor. That would give you a reason to want to know more. And you might have webcams in your home. Maybe your security system comes with it, or maybe you bought some that you installed yourself and you put them in key locations, which I have a couple in my home. But I kind of want to buy a set just for the tank, and maybe put one on the top looking at the surface of the water, and put one in the sump looking down at the water again. I remember one guy had a camera that was infrared, and he had it pointed straight down at the filter socks, and because it was infrared, it could be inside an enclosed cabinet that was completely dark inside, and it could see, and he could tell if his socks were clogged up or not. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Be able to, just inspect those areas that need the most maintenance is a great idea. And, if you're running a calcium reactor or you're dosing, depends on the quality of the camera and your connection, of course, but you could see if anything is trickling out. Or maybe, it just comes down to how much you want to control remotely. For me, I don't want to do anything while I'm gone. I am hoping for the best, and I'm trusting that that everything's going to go well. But I really don't pull out my phone and check on it all the time because I want to stay in the moment. And even when I'm talking with people, when I'm at trade shows or whatever, I don't pull my phone out of my pocket and start reading text or follow Facebook or look at Instagram. I tend to stay in the conversation, and or I'm using my phone to film stuff. And I almost never think to check my parameters. If I get a text, that's one thing. But just for the regular, I need to know it. I don't need to know. Matter of fact, I can't do anything about it. I'm 1,500 miles away. I would have to call a local fish store. I'd have to call my tank sitter. I'd have to call a neighbor and say, break the door down. Solve the disaster. So, those are some of the points that I thought would be really important for you to consider. And so, like, if you're about to go on a trip in a week or so, I would say start prepping today on your tank. Do your water change now. Don't do it the day before. Clean out your reactors and replenish them. Clean your skimmer and give it a good soak. And make sure everything is super stable. Yeah, someone just put, Hank Besters just said, don't put new fish in your tank right before you leave. I remember doing that many years ago. It was funny. I bought this cute little adorable lionfish, and I put it in a 29-gallon, and I had a person living here, as a roommate. And so I told him, if you could just feed this lionfish, that would be great. And he, of course, was thinking lionfish. He knew that they could sting you. But the weird thing is that the lionfish vanished. I mean, without a trace. And the tank's a 29-gallon tank. And I said, where's my lionfish when I came back? And he said, I have no idea. And there was no carcass. There was no change in water parameters. There was no, what do you call it, beef jerky on the carpet. I did have a dog at the time, but if that fish were to have gotten out somehow and, like out the back of the canopy and then bounced off the overflow box and then tumbled down onto the battery backup and then finally flopped down onto the carpet behind the sofa, I don't see how the dog could have got it. And if if Jake had gotten to it, I think it would have really hurt him. He would have gotten really sick from the toxins in their quills. So really, really weird to have a fish just evaporate and never exist. And that one, was just an oddity. And yeah, I did actually get it right before a trip. I mean, not the day before, but 2-3 days before. Best to not make big changes on your tank ever when you're about to leave town is the absolute mantra I want you to take from this conversation today. All right. Yeah, I know. Steven's pointing out the Tidal Gardens is live, but they're selling stuff. I'm just here for education. So let me talk about YouTube. That was another topic I wanted to get into today. Hang on, let me have a sip of coffee. Okay, good, it's not blazing hot. YouTube. I wanted to ask you guys, please comment, below when you're watching this video later, and of course you can put in the chat because YouTube saves our chats. Tell me what channels you're subscribed to or that you're following or that you tune into regularly. And you're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm actually very curious to see how many channels you are ingesting on a regular basis. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the channels I watch. And I want to talk about some of the people that I know that do YouTube. And there's so many I don't know or I don't have time to watch. And if you say, hey, Mark, you should really be watching this one, tell me that as well. I'd love to hear your opinion. I met with George, which is Coral Fish 12G. I've known him for a very long time, since he was a little boy. And I remember when I came across one of his very first videos, man, 8 years ago? 9? I'm not sure the date. And I remember he was doing like a product review of a Kent scraper. And that thing is just baked into my brain. I've never forgotten it since. And he was super cute. And he says, this is my Kent scraper, and this is how I scrape my glass, and I keep it clean, and I highly recommend it. Super adorable. And I thought, wow, I love it. And now he is this massive channel. I mean, his channel is double mine when it comes to the audience. And he's traveled around the world. He's filmed things with other people. He's done collaborations. And he just did this Aquashella event that happened last weekend. It was that him and Sean Hale from Fritz worked together to create that event. Did a very nice job. And I've got a couple of videos coming out that you guys can look forward to. And I was talking with George, and I said to him, you're doing a great job. I love it. And I am really impressed with the way you edit your videos. And I wish that mine were more, what was the term I used? More, see, I've got my part of my head already. I can't think of what I told him. Entertaining. I wish mine were more entertaining. And he stopped me and he said, I wish that this is George talking, I wish that mine were more educational. And I thought, how ironic is that? Because I default to education. It's just, I do it all the time. And, I watched another, well, I don't want to jump ahead. I'm going to stick on George. George is doing this great job. If you're not following his channel, follow it. He's a college student and, like I said, does really nice videos. So, if you aren't doing that, check it out. I ran into Than from Tidal Garden, and I've been following his stuff for a while. He's one of my favorites because I like his style, and I love his photography. It's just beautiful. And, his conversational tone is very easy to follow. Right now, he's got a huge build. He's, making a new giant warehouse, if you haven't seen anything about it yet. And the entire greenhouse, I guess, I'm not even 100% sure, is supposed to move into this new facilities. And that's really exciting. So to run into him last weekend was a lot of fun, to catch up a little bit. And I don't know if he'll be at MACNA. So, I mean, that's one thing. If you're going to MACNA here in 2 weeks, you get to meet some YouTubers, and that'll be fun. Then I wanted to talk about Robert from Marine Depot. I've been following Robert for several years. And you have to realize Marine Depot's videos are going to be primarily things they sell. I mean, it totally makes sense. And, he explains how things work, what sizes they come in, and promotional, but also educational, because he's explaining how to use something so that way you can watch the video and, and mimic it. Not really product reviews, I wouldn't say, because, they sell it. And it's kind of hard to review your own product. But, I mean, anyway, he just did a video about Aquashella that came out last night. And I watched it, and it was so good. And I thought, man, there is no way I can edit a video like that style. And I think part of it is that when I go to these events, like I said, I'm in the moment. And I'm watching what's going on around me. I'm immersed in the conversations. And then I say, okay, let me go film some stuff. And I run around and I film. And I don't typically stop and hold the camera up in front of me and say, hey guys, I'm at Aquashella and we're going to go inside now. I never even think to do that. That's not my, it's not even in my head. And these are things I probably could work on and improve upon. It's more that vlogging style. But he did a really great job. He knew the names of the people in the booths, and he jump cut through all the rooms, and he highlighted, fresh water, salt water. It was a really cool event. I actually had a great time at this thing. So, I mean, if you have events in your area, get in your car and go. Just do it. But yeah, Robert did a great job, so I would recommend following Marine Depot. And then a few months ago, I was in Las Vegas to film, some preview footage for MACNA, and Devin was there from Reef Dudes, and Devin, of course, rolled out a video. Man, I'd say a week, 2 weeks later, and it was great. I mean, it was so good that I said, "There's no way I can do it justice." I mean, his was great. It's how I should do a video, but I can't. We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses and we all have our special style. And I think that's what makes us all different on the YouTube platform. And so when you're looking at different creators and how their content comes across, you can decide, I want to be educated today, or I want to be entertained, dance monkey. That's my ongoing joke. I love saying that to people, especially when they do a live stream, like, hey guys, and then they don't say another word, and it's kind of like a dead moment, and I'm like, dance monkey, because I want to be entertained. So yeah, Devin did a great job. He will be at MACNA. I came across a new channel, Mindy's Reef, and she apparently has been in the hobby a really long time. She'll be at MACNA on Saturday, so if you're, again, trying to meet someone, you can look for her on Saturday. So those are some of my thoughts about YouTube and meeting other creators. And I've been really insular about, not talking about other channels on my channel. And it's kind of a personal bias. And it's kind of a way I live my life. I tend to stay in my own cocoon. I don't really branch out a lot. I don't go out and watch a lot of videos. And I've actually kind of opened my eyes a little bit more and kind of looked around me a little bit. And, I'm enjoying some of it. So I was really curious what you guys are enjoying. I'd like to hear what you have to think. What you're seeing, what you're loving. So, Cuban Reefer made it to the live chat. Okay, now we can all, thank you for watching. The show is over now. Yes, no, I agree. I won't be copying other people's styles. Matter of fact, I try to stay to my own. But, as with anything, I mean, even with your reef tank, you start off and you see other people's ideas and you try to improve. You try to make your system a little bit better. If you have to break it down and set up a new tank, of course, you're going to improve it. And the same thing happens with us, when we're working on, another hobby. And like in my case, YouTube, it's a business, it's not a hobby. And I really do enjoy the edits. And yet last night, if you're following me, through the notification system, you probably saw my post on the community tab where I was expressing the absolute honest truth that sometimes when I'm sitting down to edit these videos, I hate the video. I mean, I'm just doing it and it's not hating the edit. I don't mind editing. I hated what I filmed. I hated how it's coming out. I hated what I said. And, it's a weird dichotomy for me because I go in with the best intentions when I'm filming, and then when I finally get in front of my computer, it's just not as good as I'd like it to be. And then as I work my way through it, I might hate it for quite a bit. I might not. I remember the big 1-hour video about Joe's tank, the 20,000 gallon reef. I worked on that thing for easily 23, 24 hours in a row of pure edit. And I was hating it, and I just felt like it was not good enough. The quality was not good enough. And I had to just keep telling myself, just keep going, just get it done. I really, really, really didn't like it. Absolute truth. And then, I put it away for like 2 or 3 months, at least 2 months, where it was just like, oh, I got to finish it. And I was like, no, I hate it. And then finally I said, okay, I just got to do it. And I sat down on my computer, and it was like a Saturday like today. And I just sat down and said, I'm not moving from this desk till it's done. And I spent another 13 hours straight editing and slicing and dicing and putting in the exact footage where it matched what he was saying and looking for what he said to make sure it lined up with that part of the video. And as it got closer to the end, I got more and more and more excited. And I was like, this is an awesome video. And I got really motivated. And I think what really ends up making it when I start to finally like it, and this sounds so dumb to say it out loud, but it's when I add the music. And then all of a sudden, it all just comes together. It's like you baked a cake and it wasn't flat across the top. You know, it made like this mound. You're like, you wanted it flat so you could decorate it. And then finally, you put the frosting on it. You put the last couple touches, and you're like, oh, it's gorgeous. I love it. Let's eat it. You know, and I kind of feel like it's the same way that I'm working my way through systematically, and I'm not in love with it, or I really am hating it. And then, you know, I have to kind of psych myself up. And I'll tell you, with Joe's tank, and, you know, very few people know this, so I'm putting this out there for the first time, you know, actually saying these words. When I filmed it with the intention of getting it on YouTube because no one had done it. And then when I'm editing it and hating it, I had to tell myself, Mark, no one has filmed his tank and put it on YouTube. No one's ever going to see this tank until you upload this video, because it's unknown unless you just walked in and stared at the tank in person. And so get the thing uploaded. Even if it's not as good as you want it to be, it's better than zero video. And that was kind of my thought process. That was my psyching myself up. You know, it's like, just get it done, upload it, because so many people appreciate this tank. And that video is super popular. It's got something like 400,000 views. I've had a lot of people tell me I've watched it multiple times. When we did the tank tour here in the local area for my club, my friend Ryan had a big screen TV up on the wall next to his huge 1,000-gallon reef, and he put a video up, and it was like, I don't know, National Geographic or something, and he just said, this is no good. He switched it to Joe's tank and had that running in the background from YouTube. And I've heard that. You know, I know fish stores will put Joe's tank up as something to watch when you're standing around in the store. Like I said, it's a very popular video. And to think that I was really not liking it is just, I'm just a little bit crazy. Okay, so don't worry, I'm not changing my videos. I will continue to try and improve them. I picked up a new camera that's called a 360 camera. I played with it just the night before Aquashella to see how it worked. And then I did some 360 filming at Aquashella, which I'm going to compile as its own video. And I'm going to have to upload, and it's a 4K video. And then the way a 360 camera works, it actually sees the entire room like a ball. So you can actually, when it's playing, you'll be able to move the room around and look everywhere, every direction you want with your fingertip. You can just drag it. If you're holding your phone up and you're watching the video, you've probably noticed this on Facebook. You can do this with your phone back and forth, and the scenery will change kind of panoramic. And you could do that with this video, but you'll look really odd doing this number to look around. It's a lot easier to just hold the phone in your hand and swipe and go down and go up and zoom in and zoom out. You can do that too. It's really neato. Now, I haven't finished that edit, so I don't know if it's going to be good for you guys, but I'm hoping for the best, because I want to do 360 videos at MACNA, and that way you can see the entire vendor hall, and maybe we'll get into the speaker room or at the reception party or at the Saturday night gala. You know, these are the times when I think it would be really cool to kind of be able to do this 360-degree panoramic type view of the room, instead of being focused on what the camera's looking at straight ahead. My best friend said, oh, great. So now you have a camera that is going to further distract people with ADD who can't stand watching you do an interview. Like, there you are talking to someone, but they're going to look what's over on your left. I'm like, I think it's kind of a neat thing. So that is coming up. I got the dual wireless microphones. We've been using them now for the last couple of weeks successfully. I used them when I did the interview with Inappropriate Reefer. Forgot to mention his channel. That's another fun one that can be worth following if you haven't started following him yet. So, I mean, there's so many YouTubers out there. I want to hear about all of them. And, you know, I want to hear about the best of them. That would be great. Tell me the best ones, because I want to follow, you know, things that are really interesting and cool. And that's it. All right. That's it on that. I wanted to mention something funny that happened this week that I'd not seen before, and I'm wanting to hear if you have seen this before, or if it really was the first ever been done, because I was really shocked. There was a guy, we're back to lionfish again. There was a guy in the Club Mila's Reef group on Facebook, which is my group, and if you are not a member yet, you're invited. Just remember, you have to be good in there, you have to be kind, and if you decide to be aggressive, you'll be banned forever. You'll never be back allowed inside. And so far, it's been a very peaceful group. There's about 1,200 or 1,300 of us in there, and we talk about all things. It's a lot of fun. So this guy posted a short video of his lionfish, and he was feeding it pellet food. And I have never heard of anyone feeding a lionfish pellet food. And it was snapping them up. And I just thought, I mean, it's kind of crazy to me. These are predators, and even when they're small, they eat small live foods. And I know you could feed a krill and stuff, but pellet food? I mean, that was just like, wow, that caught my eye. So just wondering if you've seen something random like that in your experience, or if that's a thing. Do people feed small lionfish pellet food normally? News to me. Had no idea. Okay, reef tank update, and then we'll answer some of your questions. The reef tank, I have, as of today, decided to stop dosing vodka. My tank has been doing some weird stuff ever since I started adding it. I went at, I don't know the exact timeline, but I think it's been 6 weeks. And I was dosing it aggressively to knock down the nitrate. That was my goal. And I know a lot of you, it's like, well, why didn't you do this? Or why aren't you doing that? Or why don't you buy this? That's not the point. I just want to bring the nitrate down. That's been up for a very long time. And I knew vodka works, and I was going that direction this time. And I've talked about this a bunch, so I don't really want to rehash it, to be honest. But I've been watching the corals, and one of my acros had basically I guess an STN event. But I was immediately blaming the anemone, that it was just stinging it, and the coral's like, ugh, and it just started to die on that little area at the base. And then I saw Montipora in a totally different part of the tank where a piece of it turned white. And I thought, all right, could be a lack of light, And then I saw one of my banded starfish that I have had. I'm looking down there right now. I'm trying to see if, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. But my banded starfish I've had for at least 10 years was walking across the front of my reef, and my copper band was very interested in it. And then I watched it go pow and bite something off the starfish. And I thought, that's kind of odd. That's not normal behavior for the starfish or for the copper band. And then I realized that starfish that normally has 5 arms only had 3. And so of course I thought maybe one of the arms got stuck in a Vortec pump and ripped it off, which probably did happen, to be honest. And then I thought, well, I've got to move the starfish somewhere safe since the copper band's kind of attacking it, so it can recover and regrow its arms. And I discovered that the 3rd arm was already mostly tore off. So it's down to 2 arms and a disc that's kind of shredded. I don't know what happened to the starfish over the last day or so. I have no idea. Normally they just roam the tank. All of a sudden this guy's, in shreds. So I went ahead and I put it in the refugium down there with the clownfish and the anemone, and I'm hoping it'll survive, but I don't know if it will. I kind of feel like I'm looking at it upside down right now. It's way over there. Ugh, I'll have to look later. But I get kind of bummed out whenever I lose livestock, especially things I've had for so long. And the vodka thing was just a coincidence. Just I'm seeing a little too much white too fast. And what is actually happening with the water chemistry is what matters, right? And so the way vodka dosing works, you dose vodka, which is a carbon source, not like carbon like you're filtering, but like a carbon source. There's a difference between filtration and then there's dosing. And you can use sugar, you can use vinegar, you can use vodka, or you can use Nopox, which might have that stuff in it, for all I know. These are things that reduce nitrate in the tank. And the weird thing was that my nitrate really hasn't come down, but my phosphate has just gone away. And that makes 0 sense, because what happens is the nitrate goes away and then the phosphate chases it. It goes next. And my tank went straight to lowering phosphate. And I've been really surprised. I'm just like, what? How is that even possible? And the last 2 times I've tested it, it's been 0.05. And normally my tank is like 0.25, heading to 0.5. And then I put in phosphate RX and knock it down. Haven't needed to, because the vodka just pulled it right out of the water, which is really odd. Plus, I had this weird stringy stuff growing in the plants of the refugium, and a little bit of it appeared in the anemone cube and inside the pumps and on a bird's nest, inside the reef. And I thought, okay, so, things that make me uncomfortable. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and stop dosing it for a while and let the tank kind of rebound. And then I guess what I will do is quit trying to tweak the system, because the reef is happy. Why am I trying to make it better when it's working with the numbers it has? But at that same point, I am going to do finally some water changes. So that's the update on that. All right. If you have questions, please do type them in. I will try to answer them all. We have about 20 minutes left, roughly. So now is your chance to hit me up with your topics. Everyone's typing furiously, I'm sure. Last time I tested nitrate, and I used 2 different test kits, it's around 40. So they haven't dropped. They don't go up, but they don't go down. That's the weird thing. And I expected them to collapse. I figured it would probably take another 4 or 6 weeks for it to happen. But the stuff I'm seeing in my tank makes me think, I really do think I just dosed the vodka too aggressively. I was being a little impatient. And, you know, it's not the way to do things with a reef tank. Nothing good happens fast in a reef tank. Steven Smith says, how are you today? I'm doing good. I had some serious back pains that were driving me crazy. And whatever was in my spine or a bulging disc or who knows whatever it was, it probably clicked over, you know, a millimeter or a 1/16 of an inch or something. And I'm back to my normal level of pain and I'm good to go. Today is water testing. I'm going to fill this blank space so you're not bored to tears. Today is water testing day. So Saturday, I always recommend people test. Matter of fact, last night at 2 a.m., when I was still awake, of course, I saw someone posting their test kit results on Club Milo's Reef. And I thought, that is really cool. Oh, let me talk about my name for a minute. You know, a lot of you guys are new. And no one knows how to pronounce my name. So first of all, I should have started this video with an introduction. I just never do it. My name is Mark E. Levinson, and I run Milev's Reef. And everyone says, well, I call it Melev's Reef. Matter of fact, I talked with a wholesaler at Aquashella last weekend for at least 20 minutes. And he, you know, just thought he was talking to some random guy. And, you know, but he knew I knew something, but he didn't know who I was. And I figured he probably knew me. And, you know, finally I just took out my card and I gave it to him, showed him the logo. And he's like, oh, Melev's Reef. I said, yeah. And you know, he's, oh, I love your website. You know, all the, you know, the whole, and it was funny because now he connected 2 and 2, and that happens to me all the time. Everyone knows me, but they don't know it's really me, unless you know they've seen me through the YouTube channel because that made me more visible. But a lot of people for a long time have known me because of my articles, my blogs, and my websites. And so when I was talking with him, he said, well, how do you say your name? And so the initials of my name are M.E. Levinson. So M-E, me, just like the word me. And so that's why I say me. And then Levinson, I don't say leave, I say Lev because Levinson. So I say me Lev and me Lev's Reef. That's how I say it. And you know, it's not like there's a right or wrong way to say it. It's just how I say it. And I think that's what confuses people because when they're reading the words, they're thinking Melev's Reef for some reason. I don't know why they do that. Okay, Michael Rapun asks, or says he's getting back into the hobby after 10 years. Welcome back. And he's going to Mackinac for the first time. Great decision. Everyone else in this chat room should learn from you. And I'm only going to go on Sunday. Is there anything I should make sure not to miss? Well, you only have a day, and there's a lot to see in that day. Make sure you get the Mackinac 2018 app and put it on your phone. Or go to the website and work your way. Just use the app. It's so much easier. Go to the app and start looking at the talks on Sunday and see if there's anything you absolutely have to hear. You know, decide in advance. Then look at the vendor hall map, probably easier on a computer because it's a huge map with a lot of stores. Vendors or shops or booths. I mean, there's 150 booths. And for me, I like to break it up into 3 days. So I try to see a third of the vendors, a third of the vendors, a third of the vendors, you know, like that. And so I visit 50 booths in one day. That's a lot of booths. You'd be surprised how little time you have when you're trying to visit all the booths. You definitely want to be going to the raffle to win stuff. You know, you're going to buy, I don't know, $100 worth of raffle tickets and put them in all the products you want to win. What I like to do, my trick for the raffle, and not to win, I never win, But my trick to know when they're going to draw my ticket is if I'm trying to win a Vortec pump and I put tickets in that box, I will take a picture of the prize with my ticket number so it's on my phone. So I'm not like trying to look through a bunch of sheets of tickets. It's just easier for me. And when they say our next prize is a Vortec MP40, I can check my phone. Yeah, that's when I put a ticket in for. And that way if they say we're doing a filter sock kit, well, I didn't enter that. I can just kind of ignore them and do a thing on Instagram or talk to the people next to me. But that's my situation there. And so you want to do that. What else on Sunday? That's really it. It's going to be buying things. So if you're coming one day and you didn't say if you're flying or driving, but plan to bring home livestock. So you might want to have a cooler that you could carry livestock in. If you're buying things at the beginning of the day, like as soon as you arrive, they will keep it in the back of the tank so that way you can pick it up later in the day. But don't wait too long. At one point, they are going to close the vendor hall down so that the vendors can break down their booths. And it is really hard to retrieve your stuff from vendors when all the pipe and drape starts vanishing and half the booths are gone. And you're like, well, they were over. Oh, were they over there? And it gets really confusing. So you want to make sure that you get your stuff in a timely fashion. You might give them your phone number so you guys can stay in communication to text, hey, I'm heading over to get my frag. And hopefully they'll answer. I mean, these are just some ideas. Yeah, if you're driving, you're going to want a cooler. So, I mean, because you got to come home with some stuff. And you could come home with fish. You could come home with anemones. You can come home with corals. You could come home, Or 8 does a great raffle for all the things they grow themselves. Clams. Man, in my head, I'm thinking seahorses. I think they do seahorses too. So, I mean, there's a lot of different types of livestock, and you could try to win. So that would be nice. And then, of course, meet some people. Hang out with some people. Get to know each other. It's important. And buy your ticket for next year's MACNet while you're there. Okay, next question. Reefaholic says, I've noticed in the summer months that the PO4 increases significantly due to all the people at the beach and the trash in the water. Not really sure. Are you measuring beach water for phosphates? I don't know. I don't get it. Let's see if I missed any other questions. Today it's so easy. No one's asking questions. I love it. Jason Taylor says, I have some antheists that are picky eaters. Any recommendations on prepared food I can put in an auto feeder? Going away for a few weeks. Wow. Okay. Antheists like to eat all day long. I mean, in the wild, they don't stop eating. They are non-stop foragers. Sort of like tangs, but antheists are even higher. Because they're such active fish, they need to eat a lot to keep their body mass up. And to be gone for so many weeks with an auto feeder, I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's a little disconcerting. You can use different types of food. I mean, obviously, you want to get some really healthy fish food. Like a flake food, there's different versions of flake food. There's some that's going to be like potato chips. And there's going to be some that is going to be much higher quality in the alpha fatty acids and in the beta carotene and the reds that are added that gives the fish the vibrant color. And to rely on pellet food only to feed your tank, your antheists, you might check the Cobalt line and see what they've got. They've got a series of foods that are added with, that are laced or laced, that are, they have probiotics in them, and that could be a possible thing that would work. I'd like to see someone feeding your tank some frozen food too. And in the old days, we had a product called Cyclops, and there is a Cyclops powder food that can be used, but it's powder, and that doesn't really work very well in an auto feeder either. So it'd be great if you had someone that could put some other food in the tank a couple times a day. You didn't say what size tank it is. We don't know what type of filtration you have, how much it can handle. But yeah, that's going to be a challenging one, and I wish you the best. I hope that it goes well. Skyman asks, what brands of tanks do you recommend for long lasting and 100 gallons or larger? Oh, wow. Okay. I think the top of the line, and I might be a little biased, I think the top of the line is Reef Savvy. They are known for making beautiful tanks, and they seem fantastic. They're made of glass, and their quality is really, really great. Planet Aquarium is another brand that's actually local. They build them here in my area, and they make really nice tanks. For me, the best judge of a tank, of course, is going to be your own eyeballs to look at them in person if you can. And secondarily, how long is the warranty? If you are told a tank has a 1-year warranty, it tells you, I mean, oh, man. It's okay, so when LEDs first came out, they kept saying these are good for 5 years. They're going to save you all this money. You're not going to have to buy more bulbs. You're going to save money on electricity. These things are fantastic for 50,000 hours, which means they'll last you 5 years. But the warranty wasn't 5 years. And I thought, well, that's odd. You're telling me it's good for 5 years, but you're giving me a 1-year warranty. So, that's kind of a personal thing. Like I said, it's a bias. I don't know. I'm actually in communication with a company right now that's building a huge acrylic tank. And that tank is going to go on their own stand. And if you use their stand, it's a lifetime warranty. Lifetime. I plan to live a long time. That is a fantastic warranty. That tells me they really stand behind the tank. So, but that's acrylic. And you didn't say glass versus acrylic. But yeah, it's not a cheap tank either. Frank Smith says, how did you persuade the missus to let you build a fish room? Real easy. I got in the hobby when I got divorced. By the way, fish food. One of the important rules, it's getting a little easier these days because everyone's using LED lighting, but make sure you're not putting your fish food in a spot where it gets hot. Like if you have a jar of flake food or a jar of pellet food, don't set it on top of the light fixture where it's baking the food inside the jar or the little pouch. You want to make sure that that stuff stays cool, just like you store any other kind of food in a pantry. Fish food does not belong in a hot area next to a hot thing. So don't degrade the food while it's sitting there, especially when you have a whole bunch of it. Let's say you bought a giant jar and the top of it's great because you just started it and then you're baking it every single day on top of a light fixture. Make sure you avoid that. You know what? Good food. I'm going to jump back to the Antheus one, and I know you're not going to be there. One of the foods that you could totally use is a refrigerated food called Arctipods. I think it's Arctipods from Reef Nutrition. And it's got a little pop top like the top of a bottle of shampoo. You just pop it open and you just squirt a little bit in the tank. And Antheus love it. So if someone can shoot that in, once a day, that'd be good. I mean, again, I'm trying to get away from just relying on auto feeder only for Antheus. That's a toughie. Yeah, the turnaround time for Reef Savvy is not quite that long, according to the chat. One person said 7 years. I think it's like a 9-month wait. So, but it's a huge investment. It'd probably take you 9 months to come up with the money. Felix, don't get mad at me. Mr. Reef Buster says, Mark, my live rocks keep getting turf algae. I've cooked them for 8 months, and within 3 weeks of putting them inside my tank, they grow turf algae again. What am I doing wrong? Well, it could be your lighting is too long. It could be your cleanup crew is too small. And other than that, it's just rock. And if you cooked it for 8 months, then the rock is clean, and you're just getting the nuisance algae that's happening from lighting and nutrients in the water. So you want to lower nutrients in the tank. You want to, the food you're using should be consumed within 2 minutes of being added to the tank. If you put food in the tank and it's there for a long time, or it settles on the bottom and lands on the rocks, that's not good, because it's just going to break down and add to the nutrients of your tank. And there was a guy recently posted in the group, and he said, I have a problem with algae, and we were talking back and forth. I said, show me the tank. It was a bad problem with algae. And he says, my phosphates are measuring very low or almost zero. And I said, that's because it's all in the plants. If you were to rip out all that stuff manually, and then like an hour later test your phosphates, that test kit's going to show you a totally different number than you're used to seeing. And that's because it's all bound up, and when you're ripping it out by the handful, and you're pulling it out of the tank, the phosphate level is going to be released into the water. It's just what happens. So he has to manually remove as much as possible, Turf algae is harder to remove. It's almost as bad as bryopsis because it's very short and dense and coarse, hard to get to. And that's why you need a cleanup crew. And if you've had a cleanup crew in the past and you didn't put, and there's old and lazy, you have to replace them with new hungry ones. When you go to the fish store and you look for a cleanup crew and you see that tank full of snails and that tank full of hermit crabs and that tank full of emerald crabs, all those guys are starving. There's nothing in there for them to eat. They're cleaning each other off to get a bite. And then you put them in your tank and they're like, oh, it's like Disneyland for them. And they're super excited because they can devour all this food and they work. And you're going to need to replenish your cleanup crew. My rule is 1 per gallon. So you have a 100-gallon tank, you need 100 critters. And I know it sounds like a lot. And someone commented on one of my previous videos saying, oh, that's horrible, and it's a bad advice, and you're killing the oceans. And no, I'm not. I'm keeping the tank clean. And some hermit crabs will eat some snails. Some hermit crabs will fight other hermit crabs. The urchin may flip over upside down and a fish will eat it. And it's a circle of life. Things are going to happen in your tank because they are living, breathing animals that have a thought of their own. They're not just obedient little beasts. So that is what it is. And then when you're putting these snails and hermit crabs in your tank, hermit crabs you can put anywhere. I mean, you can put them right on the area, good smooth move. But then, if they crawl away, you could pick them up and put them back in that area. But snails specifically, when they wander away from your target area, like they're up on the glass instead of that rock covered in algae, pull it off the glass and put it back on the algae. And so it's got something to work on. Put them to work. Actually make them do it. It's not necessarily the brand of the lighting, but yeah, lighting, I mean, a Chinese light fixture may not have the same components as the American version. And let's get into that for a moment. When you're buying gear, a lot of times you're like, well, how do I save money? How can I get the best deal? Is it on sale? Do I get free shipping? I was at Aquashella last weekend, and there was a pump that was for sale from a vendor who's known on eBay, and for the cheap J-Bow type stuff. And it looked very similar to something being released by another company right now. And so in my brain, and I have no proof, this is complete theory, so take it with a bucket of salt. I feel like if I needed to build a pump and I had to have China build it because I need them to save me money so that you can afford to buy it, because if I build it in America, it's too expensive, which is a whole other topic that really annoys the heck out of me, but what can we do? I send the specs to China, they build it exactly the way I want it. They use all the components I've asked for, they do it all. And that was the day shift. And then, in my opinion, in my brain, because of watching TV and being cynical and hearing things, I feel like then the night shift comes in, and because they have the specs, they can just slightly alter it a little bit and use cheaper components and build pretty much the same thing that's a little different inside that won't last as long, that they can sell for nothing, and that floods our market. So, and that's where you hear the terms like it's a Tunzi knockoff, it's a Vortec knockoff, it's a Biz knockoff, or whatever brand you want to talk about, Coral View knockoff, a Gyre knockoff. I kind of feel like that's what's actually happening. So if the light fixture was a knockoff of a good fixture, because they just knew what goes in one, because they built one for a company that needed 1,000 lights, and so they made another 1,000 or 2,000 of a cheaper version to make some quick money, then it could actually be detrimental to your tank, and it might not have the right spectrum to where it's growing some algae. But it could just be your nitrate and your phosphate are too high, your lights are running too long, and you have no cleanup crew. So, I mean, it may not be the light at all. You didn't say how long you're running them, but I would say your main lighting over the tank should be on roughly about 7 hours a day. And there was another guy in a group, I don't think it was my group, that posted last week about how he runs his lights over his tank 17 hours a day. And then you showed a picture of his tank. And I said, well, you have to let me know how your livestock does under that, because that's a really long period. And he showed a picture, and I wasn't impressed. If he's watching this, I'm sorry. I wasn't impressed. It's the truth. Tank was okay. Corals were okay. They weren't light demanding corals. They were just run-of-the-mill, easy corals. He said the tank had been running for 2 years. But I have this feeling his tank would look so much better if he cut his light period way back to something around 7, 8, maybe 9 hours a day, and it might just thrive. So that's just my personal take on that one. Don't let them run too long, because once you hit a point of, I was going to say point of no return, that's not the right phrase, but you're going too far, and then you start feeding algae until the lights turn off. Do you need to quarantine invertebrates and corals, Ben asks. Corals would be great as a quarantine, specifically if you don't have time to dip them as soon as you come home. Like they got shipped in, someone gave you one, you went to a frag swap intending to buy nothing, and all of a sudden you came home with a bunch and you're not really prepared to deal with it because your family wants to go to dinner. So if you have a tank where you can drop them in, and then later you can take them out and dip them and get them ready to go into your reef, that would be wise. Invertebrates, I've never quarantined an invertebrate in my life. I just don't. I acclimate snails and hermits and urchins and starfish to the tank, and then they just go in. That's it. And it is possible for a pest to be on a cleanup crew item. It is a possibility. But unlike what I see everyone talking about all the time, they're all worried of the worst case scenario. I'm not fearful of pests. I mean, they happen, you just deal with it. I am not going to try to be this control freak to where I say, no worm shall enter my tank, no pod shall enter my tank, no crab, no shrimp. I do my best, but if it happens, you just deal with it. Katani Reef, I love your question. Super easy. Hello, he's from Poland, and he says, when do the live streams start? They're always at 2 p.m. on Saturday, and that would be Central Time or Texas time. So when you're in Poland, you can type into Google, what time is it in Texas right now? And that will tell you what time it is, and then you'll know what time to tune in. And we're usually on from 2 to 3, and we were right at 3 o'clock. And then, unless I can't do a stream, and then usually what I will do is I will tell everyone in advance, like the show next weekend, I can't do one. Or I'll put a thing on the community tab on YouTube saying we won't have a stream today. And there were some people streaming last weekend. I guess I could have tried, but I was just busy. I was just enjoying the event. So I did not do any streaming whatsoever from there. Hank Basters asks, what kind of dip do you use? I've been using Revive, but there's a new product that's across the room. I can't quite see it. I think it's called, no, that's the wrong name. One Shot? That's not right. It's brand new. It just came out from Aquatech. They released the brand new bottles last weekend, and they gave me a bottle. So I'm going to try that out and see how it works. I'm sure it'll be fine. Mark Vera is the owner of that company, as far as I know. And I mean, I don't know if he has partners. And he was telling me about it, and he was explaining, all the stuff, the chemistry that I know nothing about. And he was saying that it was, that they were, really proud of it, and it was brand new, and, so I grabbed a bottle. So I'll let you know what happens with that one. And you know what? I think we need to kind of wrap it up. I want to thank you guys for being here at the live stream. We're coming up on an hour. Test your water today. Post your results. I would love to see them. You can use Instagram. I'm at Me Loves Reef on there. You can come to Facebook. I'm at Me Loves Reef over there as well. And we have a group there called Club Me Loves Reef. So if you go to groups, facebook.com/groups/Me Loves Reef, you'll find the group and you can apply. There's 3 questions you have to answer. And the questions are really hard. Number 1, do you have a tank? Number 2, what's your favorite fish? Which, believe it or not, everyone has said that's a hard question. And number 3 was, how did you find out about this group? And people have told me that they found out about it from Facebook. They found out from YouTube. They found out from Instagram. They found out from the newsletter. They found out from, what was another one? Some of them were referred by other friends. And now the group apparently is taking up some momentum because Facebook is recommending it, and people are joining because they're seeing they recommended to come to that group. But like I said, it's a group of nice people. We don't fight, we don't argue, we don't put each other down. And if I see it, they get banned. So, and there's no coming back. So just be your best. That's my rule. And that is it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next weekend will be another live stream. The following weekend, we'll see what I can do for Macna. But I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope that the topic about prepping your tank before you travel was a good one, and I hope you'll really think about it. Maybe re-listen to it so that it all makes sense, because I probably talked a little too fast. And other than that, I'm looking forward to reading all your comments about your YouTube channel favorites. And yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks so much.